create this entire dashboard with me in just 8 minutes. Save it for later if you don't have time right now. We're looking at department expenses and department contribution for this example. I'm going to get started with adding my heading. You can go to insert a shape and change the color, outline all of that, or you can just copy and paste as you complete these. So I'm going to copy and paste, Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to double click on that to type in a new title, department expenses. This is setting the stage for where we're going to place all of our charts. First up, we're going to use a column chart to look at our total expenses compared to revenue by month. So we're going to select our data. We need to select all of the months and then our total costs and then revenue, holding Control as you do that, and then go to insert the 2D column. I'm going to Control C and then move over to the dashboard, Control V to just paste that in, and then let's move it in place and we can resize it with the little circles on the edges. I have a title, so I'm going to click on the title and press delete. And then let's right click on the expenses and then change it to secondary axis so that these are on top of each other. I'm going to change the gap width so that these are wider and the expenses is thinner. Then let's delete our right axis over to the right. And now you can clearly see your expenses compared to your revenue. So let's right click here and do a solid line and change that to black. And then in our axis off to the left, that looks okay. And then we'll change this color to a black. Looks good. Now that it's all set, let's actually right click on our axis and let's change that max value down a bit so that the chart columns take up the entire area. Next, we're going to look at department contribution to revenue. So we've got our project list here. We're going to select all of this and go to a pivot table because we want to group this together, and let's put it right below this information. I want to look at the department and the total ROI in dollars. So this is the revenue generated for all of their projects year to date. I'm going to go up to the top here and let's change that to currency and let's remove those 2 decimal places to make it easier to look at. And then let's insert a pivot chart. I'll show you slicers in a little bit. We're not going to use them for this, but this is what you would need if you wanted to. So let's click on the title again and delete, and then right click and hide those fields. And then let's right click on here and format the data series. I like the color area to be thicker, so I'm going to change the donut hole size. And then let's change this to a bevel. It just makes it look a little bit nicer, but definitely not required. And then next, let's change the colors on these sections. So we could go with different shades of gray. If you've got branding colors you want to use, it would be ideal to do that here. Slightly darker for this one, and then another shade darker, and then we could just leave the orange. So let's close out of here and see what it looks like. So we're going to Control C and again Control V to copy and paste back to the dashboard. And let's move the whole chart in place. And then we're going to need to resize this. So you can spend more time resizing if you want. And then let's move that legend to the bottom so we've got more space here. And then again, let's resize that in place. So now we have our department contribution to revenue as a total. And then let's add those data labels and we can make them bold so they stand out a little bit better. Next up, we want to look at the projects individually and the ROI percentage of each. So I'm going to select the project name and then the ROI percentage, and I'm going to insert a 2D bar chart. Let's click the title and delete it because we already have that, and then format this axis by right-clicking, and then let's reverse order this so that it's top to bottom, largest to smallest. The dollar values are very useful, but it's also interesting to see the percentage of ROI compared to what the actual spend was. So let's insert this one here by copying and pasting again and resize it. And let's make this match the others. So we'll format again and change the gap width down so that those bars are wider. And then let's change this to black or orange, that'll work. Now our bottom chart here is going to be department expenses. So this is going to be our data off to the left, and we are going to need to insert a pivot table. So this is every expense and labor included by month. So let's insert the pivot table so we can get this group together. Let's add our fields in here. So you could look at this by type, labor or expense, and then the actual spend, but let's actually do this by department. And then we'll use the slicer to split out whether it's a labor or a specific expense. So now we've got our table here. Let's add a pivot chart. You need the pivot chart because we're going to add a slicer. Let's hit OK. And then again, press the delete for the title and right click to hide those fields. And let's delete the legend. I'm going to right click here and format the color of this line and then also add in some markers. So let's go to solid line, and orange matches the rest of the theme. And then the marker, let's do a built-in, and you can change it to any shape here. You can make it larger. Let's click it a couple times, and then no border. And on the fill, let's do a solid line. And now our line is all set. You can make it a little bit thicker so it really stands out. Again, let's Control C and Control V back over to the dashboard, and then move this in place and resize it using the little circles around the perimeter of our chart. Let's make this wide so it fills the entire space. And then because I'm on mobile, I am trying to make this all fit onto a mobile screen. Next, let's go up to the top and let's insert a slicer. Let's go with type. We want to be able to see the type of expense split out versus the total. So I'm going to change this to a light gray with that quick style. And then again, there's more resizing to do for this. We want to get this into the blank spot that's there. So we can go up here and change the columns to 2. So it's going to make it more like side-by-side buttons as opposed to a list. So you can move this into place. And I just had to right click here and go to settings because I wanted to get rid of the heading. You can keep the heading if you want, or you can just press the control button to either select one, both, or no buttons. So we're right clicking here, and let's change the backgrounds on these charts to the bevel. It will match our headings. We just have to do each one individually, so I'm kind of speeding through this. And then let's change our lines to match the top graph where they are black, and format again, and let's go with grid lines that are black. Now test it out, looking good. Let's add one more chart here. We have expenses and revenue by month, but let's do an overall year to date. So let's go to insert and let's use a pie chart. I'm going to copy and paste Control C, Control V to the dashboard. And then again, you have to resize it like everything else. And I'm going to leave the title on this one. And let's type in just an abbreviated title, year to date, expenses versus revenue. And then we can get rid of the bottom because we're going to color code to the left side. So as long as expenses are black and orange is revenue, it's pretty clear. Just changing the colors here. And then let's close out. And you can make this a little bit larger if you want it to perfectly fit. But let's format one more time. And then again with the bevels just to match everything so everything is uniform. And move it in place. Dragging those circles to expand. And then let's right click again and format and then change this to a bevel as well, just like the donut chart. Now we'll close out and let's go to the bottom to our slicer and test it out. We're looking at expenses versus labor. If you hold Control and click both, you've got the total. There's the dashboard.